Hi y'all, Beau here, back again with another video. Right now I'm on break for school, and so I decided to make something. There were so many different things I thought about talking to you guys about, because there's been so much that I've been learning, but I had no idea where to start. I talk about some things on my blog, and I didn't want to repeat myself making a video, though I may end up doing that sometimes if I feel like I can't put some ideas into words, or if I ever feel like I run out of ideas, which probably won't happen anytime soon at least. But the topic I chose today really stood out to me yesterday. I feel like it's really applicable to a lot of different things that I've seen going on in my personal life and just in the world in general. And obviously I don't want to bring that kind of stuff in here per se, based on like people say 2020 is all about. I feel like it's over-mentioned, and so I want this to be applied just to everyday life. We had these issues in 2019 as well. We're going to have these issues in 3000 if we ever get that far. They're just something that's always part of the world that we can't ever get over, and that simply is just suffering. So I have a few verses here on my phone that I'll be looking at, but I don't have really any like script I'm reading, which may be a problem because I've had issues with going off script before. But just mainly, if you read through the Bible, you will tell that suffering will always be present until the new heaven and the new earth. And that's a whole different discussion. I would love to make a video on that sometime, and I should. But, like, on this earth, there will always be suffering. We can't get over it. It's one of the results of sin in this world today. And we can't get over it. It's just something, at this point, that we have to deal with. But we always think that suffering is a really negative thing. And don't get me wrong, it can seem very negative in the moment. What else are we supposed to think? I don't know. Suffering isn't fun, obviously. But we need to, James 1, 2-4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds." Trials, suffering. It's the same idea. I could go into a whole different note on trials specifically because it is different than everyday suffering that we experience. "For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and steadfastness can have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." This verse is specifically talking about trials in our life, trials where God is either testing us to see whether we will follow him or not, or Satan throwing trials and difficulties trying to make life difficult for us as Christians. And the point that James is making here is we need to count it as joy. We're not going to always enjoy it in the moment, but we should. And this sounds really weird. It's an unusual thought for most people to experience, is like, I can't be happy in the moment. I can't be happy when I'm suffering. But we are given trials and given suffering in that exact moment for a purpose. Again, it goes back to my favorite verse, Romans 8:28, "For God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose." That doesn't always mean that everything's going to be positive to us in the moment, but it means that God always has a plan through it. So we need to count it all joy through the trials. While we're going through the trials, we need to have joy. Joy is not happiness. I could go into a whole different note about joy. Joy is not happiness. They are very different things, because to be happy, oftentimes you are not in trials, you are not in difficult situations, but you can still have joy in difficult situations. Another verse similar to this is Romans 5:3-5, that says, not only that, it's important to get context to know what he's talking about, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. I think this verse talks about many key things that we need to remember, but I really like verse 5. We need to remember that through our suffering and through all of this, we're not alone. It always reminds me of a poem that I saw very common as a child. We had them on like a door frame, and I think on one of our blankets. I don't remember its name, and it has an unknown author. It might be called Footprints in the Sand, but it's just about a story of a man who has a dream, and he sees his whole life before his eyes, but each of the events in his life goes along with footprints. And he normally sees two sets of footprints, his and God's. But whenever he's going through a difficult trial or situation in his life, he only sees one footprint. And he wakes up from the dream, or in the middle of the dream, he's talking to God, and he's like, "Why do you leave me in my most difficult situations?" And the response is, I didn't leave you. When you're going through those difficult trials, the one footprint that you see is mine, God speaking, because I'm carrying you. And I feel like that speaks a lot of volumes. When we're going through trials, we are not alone. God is always there by our side. And I think that's part of what Romans 5:5 is talking about. And I think that's really too important to remember when we're going through trials or just like suffering and bad days in general, is God is always with us, especially when we call on Him, when we rely on Him, and when we go according to His plan, when we do everything we can to honor and glorify Him. We need to set our sights on Him. And similarly, there are verses here that can give us hope. Another go-to for me is Romans 8:18. It's becoming another favorite verse because Romans 8:28, as I mentioned, is still my first favorite, but Romans 8:18 is very high up there as well. For I consider that the sufferings of the present time are not worth comparing to the glory that is revealed to us. The sufferings that we go through right now are going to be nothing compared to what we have later on, especially as Christians. Compared to what we experience in heaven, there is nothing that anyone can do here to us on earth that's going to make that big of a difference in our eternal future. And it's important to keep that in mind as well. Hebrews 12:1 says, Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, which it's important to look back at Hebrews 11, the faith chapter, the Hall of Faith, often people call it, that will tell you about all these different people in the Bible that have gone through their own struggles, their own difficulties. They're not perfect, but they stayed in faith with Christ. They followed God's plan. Since we've been surrounded by that cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run the endurance, the race that is set before us. If they can do it, we know that through God, we can do it too. We need to not give up, even when we're going through trials, even when we're going through difficult situations. We need to always turn to God, and we need to not give up. We need to keep on running. 1 Corinthians 13:12 says, For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I had been fully known. We may not understand exactly why we're going through trials right now, but later on, we will be able to understand why. And I don't think we'll always understand why for every single thing that happens in our life. God won't reveal everything to us in heaven. Yet again, a whole different note that I could talk on. But it's still important for us to remember God is in control. He has a plan. You will be able to get through it. These trials will not last forever. There is a rainbow on the other side. Keep on pressing on. Talk to you later. Bye.